Good evening. Welcome to the West Ham Weekly on a Monday night. It's been a while. It's been about a month. So my apologies for that, but I'm back and good to be back as well. I hope you've all been keeping well. I'm sure you've been getting all your West Ham news from elsewhere over the past few weeks. I hope so anyway. But it's good to be back. And there's lots to talk about, of course. There's David Moyes and there's talk about new managers or potential managers, sorry. I'm also going to cover a little bit about the squad and the issues that we're going to have in the summer with regards to our homegrown players and, of course, all the usual roundup and so on and so forth. Of course, the big name or the big news at the moment is that apparently we have been talking to Ruben Amorim of Sporting. Apparently, if you believe all the rumours, we've sent a private jet out to bring him to London to discuss terms, etc. I don't know, because I asked earlier on in the evening, as I always do, I always ask, people like Sean, asking if there's any truth in the matter. And he seemed to be like, well, maybe, nothing committed. So I can't tell you for sure, but I'm going to tell you about Amorim a little bit later on. What he's like, his style of football, his background, and so on and so forth. But before I do that, let's go into the chat because it's been an awful long time since we've said hello to people in the chat. So who have we got at the start? Foxes, good evening to you. This could be a very exciting time. Moyes is a decent manager, deserves to be treated as so. It's getting toxic for him now, though. It is. Totally agree. Many people still ask me, you Moyes in, you Moyes out. I've kind of said quite a long time ago I've become Moyes indifferent. But as things progress, 4 wins this calendar year, I think it's been. And some of the games that we played, the way we lost, I'm going to talk a little bit, very briefly, about Crystal Palace and also a little bit about Leverkusen last week, which seems like a lifetime ago. But the contrast in the way that we've been playing leaves an awful lot to be desired, doesn't it? Foxes, again, it's a shame because he's done us proud in many ways, just let us down in others. Good point. Debbie and Mark, good evening to you, Mark. I hope you're well. I thank Moyes for what he's done for the club, but it's time to move on and progress, which we can't do under Moyes. And I'm beginning to feel much the same way. Just reading on reports from journalists, it seems as though from them, Amorim would accept the job if it was offered it, would be a statement signing if this happened. And according to Ornstein, Amorim is in London. Do we believe it? I haven't had it corroborated, so I can't tell you for sure. Mark, good evening to you. When David Moyes left, we would look back in the summer and realise we had let the wrong players leave the club. 3 good young international squad players in Benny, Pablo and Tilo. Well, I've got my theories on that. I think they all kind of got to a point. I would have liked to have kept Tilo Kehrer, to be honest with you. I would have liked to have kept Fornals until the end of this season. Ben Rama was taken off at half-time yesterday or at the weekend against PSG. So he's doing great there, isn't he? What did he do? He scored a goal and made one. And since then, Oliver, good evening to you. Moyes has had his time. Thanks for the trophy, but no thanks for the spineless week in, week out, turgid displays of tactical ineptitude that we've endured over the years. We move on. Steve, good evening to you, mate. I hope you're well. Thank you very much, mate. Much appreciated. Rhonda and Tony, good evening, Tony. West Ham, please get the manager deal done now so we can do our player recruitment finish before the end of June. I think that's got to be an important factor, hasn't it? We've got to make sure that whoever it is we get in as manager. I'm going to talk a little bit about Moyes in a minute. You may not like what you're going to hear, but whoever's manager, we want to get our transfers done early, don't we? We don't want to, sort of for over the last few years having to wait and wait and wait. And we hear the rhetoric, we want everything done early. And then we're right at the death of the transfer window and we're rushing players in. We don't want that, do we? Good evening, Graham. I hope you're well, mate. Thank you for joining. Thank you. Much appreciated. Good evening to you, Darlo. I hope you're well. Exciting as it is, I can't see Amorim leaving Sporting, who are going to be in the Champions League, to come to us when we probably won't be in Europe next season. And that's a very good point. And that's part of the notes that I wrote down. You're absolutely spot on, Darlo. They're about to win the Portuguese league. I think for the second time in 4 years that he's been there. And would he want to leave Sporting for West Ham United? who almost definitely won't be in Europe next season. Good evening to you, Greg. I hope you're well. Did anybody else spot Stella on the Opta Sport? I saw it. Yeah, I was there right at the front. You know, what a great view of watching all their 5 goals go in. But thank you for joining, mate. I hope you're well. Good evening, Toha. How are you? This is a proper Monday again, and starting the bidding at 21 night. Well, I've said to myself, I've got to be early from now on. So sorry to disappoint you there, Toha, as you as well, Steve, and you as well, Darlo. You're all wrong. Shaky, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Thank you very much. Godspeed, 2120. Well, you know, you're all wrong again. Galispera, Carl. Keith, sorry. I hope you're well, mate. So good evening to you. Hi, Hammerette. How are you? I hope you're well. Thanks for managing the chat for us tonight. Who else we got? Archangel Michael. How are you, mate? I hope you're well. Good to thank you, mate. Much appreciated. Let me breathe. Neil, Darlo, depends if he wants to be in the Premier League. Well, that is the payoff, isn't it? You know, that there is the, you know, do I stay at Sporting for another year and see how I get on in the Champions League, or do I take my chances in the Premier League? A lot of managers want to cut their teeth in the Premier League, don't they? And why not him as well? You got it right there, Graham. I think it was just a minute late. And to you, Daniela, another moderator on the chat. Thank you for joining. Thank you very much. I know you view on the weekend did not see the game due to playing. Oh yes, you do play cricket quite regular. Is it cricket season? It's too cold, isn't it? Hammerette. I like to mix it up a bit. Got a share of. You got a bag of Rebels. No chocolate for me today. Just some fizzy water again. Mind you, I've drunk enough over the past month to drown my sorrows, I guess. Hammerette, give still a like, chat. Thank you very much. We know how. Yeah, thank you. Much appreciated. Steve, the disappointment when the round ones are. See, you're already off on a tangent, aren't you? And nothing to do about football. Aaron, how are you, mate? Moyes in. I hope you're well. Good evening, Howard. How are you, mate? I hope you're well. Thank you for joining. Who else? We've got Rolly. How are you? I hope you're well as well. Good evening, Woodhammer. How are you, mate? Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Good evening to you, Philip. So much going on, mate, isn't there? I mean, you know, we're out of Europe. It looks like we might be finally changing manager. It won't be until the end of the season, though. I think those who are expecting David Moyes to have walked after the 5-2 drubbing of Crystal Palace, they're going to be disappointed because with, 4 games left, I think we've got, he ain't going to leave yet. You know, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because we'd like to sort of sort things out. But you know what the board are like. They're not going to let him go just yet. Good evening to you, Flemmer. Thank you, Woodhammer. Much appreciated. Good evening to you, Flemmer. I hope you're well. 4 more games and we can't see that. Now. Lee, how are you, mate? I hope you're well. Thanks for coming on. Black Country, how are you? Thank you very much, mate. I really appreciate that. Who else we've got? Mr. Pepper, how are you? All well. It's always good on a Monday night, isn't it? Mind you, I do have the little. I don't know if you can hear it whirring or not, but I got a little fan here, and it's fucking cold. It's nearly May. What's going on? And it's bloody cold. Good evening to you, Matt. I hope you're well. I don't like the weather. I don't like cold weather. I'm sure you know. P-Gads, how are you, mate? I hope you're well. Much appreciated. Good evening, Mr. Zenek. How are you? Thank you very much. Good evening to you, 69. How are you, mate? Thank you for joining. Lee, how are you? Much appreciated. We're massive over land and sea. We haven't been that massive lately, have we, to be quite honest with you? Good evening to you, Robin. How are you, mate? And good evening to you, Stephen, as well as Roy. Right, let's go. Let's do, before I get into the serious stuff, you know, about, you know, the games and David Moyes and about Amorim, why don't we do a little bit of a roundup? So let's go into this. So let's talk a little bit about contracts at the moment and what our squad might look like next season. Now, Aaron Creswell, you may or may not have heard, has been offered a 1-year extension on his contract. 34 years of age. He's been with us 10 years this coming summer. He will be looking for a new deal elsewhere. He's turned the contract down. I'm a bit confused about this because, you know, one of the things that we have a problem with West Ham United, our squad, is how old it is, the average age. I think we're about average age of 30, 31 years of age, something like that. Doesn't feel like it sometimes, does it? When you've got a 39-year-old keeper and a 34-year-old centre-back, and the next centre-back is 31 and he's crocked, and then you've got a 32-year-old right-back and a 34-year-old left-back. It feels the average age feels an awful lot older. But Aaron Cresswell, he's turned down a one-year extension on his contract. So we are going to be looking for at least a backup left-back this coming summer. Another player who's not yet agreed and doesn't look like is going to agree a new deal is Ben Johnson. And again, probably no news to you that this has been ongoing for quite some time. And the rumour is, ironically, he's about to go, at the end of the season, he's very likely to go to Crystal Palace. The irony. 24 years of age, as you know, I think I like Ben Johnson. He's had a few bad times at West Ham, but I think he's had some good times. And also the way he's, come on and some of the performances he's put in this season, I think have been pretty good. Not exceptional, but pretty good. But sometimes you need that kind of player who can play in a number of different positions, apart from left-sided attack, which was a massive mistake. But that aside, Johnson looks like another player that could be leaving. So what does that mean? Well, it means that our homegrown players, we're going to have a problem, because when you have a 25-man squad, 8 of those players need to be homegrown. So there's still, we still don't know what's going to happen with the likes of Antonio, Danny Ings, Connor Coventry left in January as well as the 2 that I've just mentioned. It means we're going to be quite depleted when it comes to homegrown players in the current squad. And the only 3 that we could possibly end up with come the end of this season is James Ward-Prowse, Joseph Anang, and Jared Bowen. So what we're going to have to do, I know there's an awful lot of talk about Tim Steidten is going to go out and buy this wonderful player from this country and that country and this international, etc., etc. One of the things that Steidten is going to be tasked to do is look for homegrown talent. Now, I've been told quite a few times now, and they won't come. One won't come as a surprise because it's a player that we were linked to back in the summer and we didn't manage to get. But the other one came as a bit of a surprise to me. And I asked, and I was told, yeah, apparently we're idiots. Let me go into them. The first one that shouldn't come as a surprise is we might be looking at Conor Gallagher this coming summer. Now, I know what you're all going to say. He's the Chelsea captain now, etc., etc. Why would they sell him? Well, they're going to have to sell players in order to balance their books. Conor Gallagher is one of their prime players at the moment. He could be worth anything up to around £50 million. And they just might, look to sell him. And West Ham United have lodged an interest in Conor Gallagher for quite some time. And my understanding is that he'll be one of our priorities this coming summer, especially when Lucas Paqueta leaves for whatever club he's going to go to. The other one, and I know some people are going to go absolutely no way, is Ivan Toney. Now, one of the things with Ivan Toney is that a lot of the big clubs are beginning to sort of feel like perhaps he's not for them. 28 years of age, yes, he decent goal scorer, etc., etc. But it sounds as if that Toney's kind of talked himself out of going to any of the big clubs, and I'm talking about the Liverpools or the Arsenal, etc. And it's possible that in order to have that next move for him away from Brentford, there's talk about that we would put a bid in for Ivan Toney. Now, both Conor Gallagher and Ivan Toney would cover the homegrown talent rules. So there'll be at least 2 in. Now, of course, there'll be other players that we would kind of expect to come back in as well. We've got Freddie Potts out on loan. And, of course, we got Flynn Downs, who's out on loan, who's had a pretty successful season at Southampton. Now, I know Southampton are looking for promotion, etc., and they would rather keep Downs, whatever league they stay in. But I've got a feeling, given that Calvin Phillips hasn't worked out for West Ham, we're going to need backup for West Ham for Alvarez, Edson Alvarez. And why not Flynn Downs? He's been one of the best players in the Championship this season. Now, under David Moyes, if Moyes stayed, then I don't think Flynn Downs would come back to West Ham. And that probably goes also for someone like Ben Rama. Right, we're talking about homegrown at the moment. But with the loan players that we've got out at the moment, if David Moyes had left, it does leave West Ham United, there's a good chance that Flynn Downs will be resurrected back into the squad. I think he's decent. I don't think he'd be any worse than Calvin Phillips. And then all of a sudden, you're going to start looking at, if we do go for Gallagher, if we do go for Toney, if Flynn Downs comes back, all of a sudden we're recouping some of the homegrown talent that we're likely to lose. Like I said, we're going to lose Cresswell. We're going to lose Ben Johnson. There's still we don't know what's going to happen with the likes of Antonio and Danny Ings. It's quite likely if we get decent prices for them, they're likely to go. So that's another 2 homegrown players that we will lose. So we're going to need, Tim Steiden above anything else is going to need to be looking at homegrown talent. And Toney is my understanding, and Conor Gallagher is also another. Make of that what you will. What else have we got? Right, let's move to, all right, I know you all love this bit, so I'm going to do it really, really quickly. We're not the only team. The senior men's team are not the only team that got a good spanking at the weekend. The women's team did even worse. They got spanked 5-0 by women's Super League leaders, Manchester City, at the weekend. Manchester City were 2-0 up within 4 minutes of kickoff, 3-0 down by the half-hour mark. And then we did all right until the 84th minute, and then we gave away another 2 goals, 5-0. Karen Skinner? Why do I think Karen Skinner? Rayhan Skinner, my apologies, only just got away with, when she was managing Spurs last season, she only just got away with relegation by the skin of her teeth. And she's about to get away from West Ham being relegated by the skin of her teeth again, because Bristol City are far, far worse in the women's league than West Ham United are. But we're second bottom. So, that hasn't worked very well. What else have we got? Well, we've got the under-21s. They're in a title race at the moment. West Ham United under-21s are second place to Tottenham Hotspur. Yes, they've got a game in hand, but we're only a point behind. And this coming Friday could be quite telling for both teams, because West Ham have got we've got Leicester City, who aren't doing that well this weekend, but Spurs are playing third place Fulham away. So the results on Friday could see West Ham United leapfrogging over Spurs in the Premier League 2 under-21s league. What about the under-18s? Well, I'm glad I didn't present this last week, because last week the under-18s got trounced at home 8-1 by Arsenal. What is it with these big cricket scores and West Ham United teams at the moment? The under-18s were back to winning ways at this weekend, though, because we beat Leicester City away from home 3-0. Alicia Sawumni scored within just 15 minutes of the game left, and Josh Ajala. There was an own goal. Then Sawumni got a goal 15 minutes from time, and then Ajala got a third. That puts us, the under-18s, just a point behind league leaders Chelsea, who have got 3 games in hand. But well done to the under-18s for recouping. What about some loan news? Well, some interesting loan news. Mason Terry, many of you probably won't have heard of him. He's probably our 6th choice keeper or something like that. Mason Terry picked up the Supporters Player of the Season award at Concord Rangers, who played at the weekend and drew 1-1. The 19-year-old was given the award by fans who have become accustomed to impressive performances, it says here, throughout the 23-24 season. So well done to him. Isn't that great for a West Ham player on loan to get an award like that? And another player who's been highly thought of is Keenan Apaya-Forsan. Do you remember I spoke about Apaya-Forsan? I thought he might sort of do something at West Ham, and there's still a chance. He's out on loan. He's out on loan at Dagenham and Redbridge, and he's impressed in his 27 appearances throughout this season for the 5th tier side by coming 3rd in their Player of the Season awards as well. So well done to those two. It's always good to see loan players going out and really progressing. Other players out on loan, Gideon Kodua and Freddie Potts, they both started for Wycombe Wanderers at the weekend, beating Carlisle 3-1 in the EFL League One and make it 9 points from their last 3 away games. So well done to them. Freddie Potts, I like Kodua, but I think Freddie Potts is just a little bit more advanced. He's another one that can come back and maybe try and stake a claim in the senior squad next season. So well done to them. Saeed Benrahma played only 45 minutes, but then got replaced at half-time as Olympique Lyonnais lost 4-1 to Paris Saint-Germain. Nathan Trott, another goalkeeper out on loan, he played 90 minutes for Vedral FC in their defeat to relegation threatened Hidori I don't know how to pronounce it. But yeah, getting game time. And he talked recently about his desire to come back to West Ham United and stake a claim in the senior team. You know, maybe be third choice. It's going to be quite a tall order. But apparently he is a better keeper than Joseph Anang. However, the other goalie that we've got out on loan, Christian Hegyi, who's also become a Hungarian under-21 international, is also an excellent keeper. We've got an awful lot of excellent keepers coming through, but an awful lot of them out on loan at the moment. Some injury news. What about what's happened to Jared Bowen? Well, he had a fantastic game last week. When he came on, when he played against Leverkusen, he set the goal up for Antonio. Apparently, he had quite a few injections in order to get himself out on the pitch, but he failed a late fitness test for the game against Crystal Palace at the weekend, so he didn't make that. But we're told that it shouldn't be too bad, and he should be back, hopefully, for the game against Liverpool at home this coming weekend. And a player that I was surprised was on the bench at the weekend was Alphonse Areola. He was back in the squad. He was on the subs bench. Now, I'm a bit confused with David Moyes, to be quite honest with you. Fabianski has done it well since Areola had been out injured, and he's done okay. He's done pretty well. And I get a feeling that in order to honour Fabianski, David Moyes decided to keep him in the side against Crystal Palace at the weekend. He was at fault for our first goal, mind you. We were all completely shit at the weekend, but Fabianski was at fault for their first goal against Palace. But I was a little bit surprised that if Areola was fit enough to be on the bench, he should have started. David Moyes should have kept the pattern of having a keeper for the league and a keeper for the cup competitions. And I was surprised. However, I do expect Areola to be back against Liverpool this coming weekend. Right, before I go into the next bit, I'm going to go back into your chat and see what else we've got here. Good evening, Christopher. How are you? Me and my youngest Margot watching till bedtime, getting her used to the West Ham. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Trevor, mate, how are you? Thanks for joining. Neil, how are you? Good evening, Mr. Will. How are you, mate? Good to see you yesterday. I hope you all got home safely. Crystal Palace now seems like a distant dream. That's because you were absolutely pissed, mate. Come on, you were. Wasim, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Thank you. Good evening to you, Bowlane Lounge. How are you? Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Good evening to you, Stephen. Good evening to you, James. I hope you're all well. Mr. Bartlett, how are you? DeCanio, WHU, how are you? To get around financial fair play, are we looking to sell the port cabins at Rush Green for 100 million to dildos or us like Chelsea did with their hotels? No. We're looking to build. I'm sure you know that we're looking at land out in Essex in order to build a state-of-the-art training complex. Apparently, what we're looking to do is we're looking to potentially sell all the sites that we've currently got, Chadwell Heath, Rush Green, etc., and bring it all together. I think someone said Basildon or near Basildon, but I can't remember. But we're looking to build a whole new complex over the next few years. Can you believe that? Barry, how are you, mate? West Ham are a big club, deserve top manager that plays good attacking football. I think that's what we're looking for, but let's hope it doesn't all go, pear-shaped. Adam, how are you, mate? I hope you're well. Thank you very much. Sunday looked tired and no fresh ideas and defence. It was a sad watch. We did look tired, not only tired physically. Well, let's do the match review. It's only going to be brief, but we not only looked tired physically, but we looked tired mentally as well. It's really weird, isn't it? Because the kind of performance that we put in against Leverkusen last night, I mean, what an atmosphere. Great atmosphere. It was almost like the atmosphere against Seville. Very, very close. I mean, margins between that. I still think the atmosphere against Seville 2 years ago was just marginally better. But the effort that we put in, you couldn't fault the team. You couldn't fault the players. You couldn't fault players like Creswell and all the other players that played in that game, etc. And it shows what we can do when we're on the front foot. That the fact that we've got that ability in order to be able to be on that, and that was without the likes of Paqueta, etc. it worried Alonso so much, as you all know, that after 20 minutes, 25 minutes, he made his first substitution because they didn't know what to do. Antonio was all over them in that first half. They didn't know what to do with him, and they had to go into the dark arts, didn't they, and start shirt tugging and all that sort of stuff. But it was a great goal created by Bowen, well taken by Antonio. He's rolled back the years. 34 years of age he's just turned. But I've got to be honest, he was fantastic. He's been fantastic since he's come back from injury. But I think we lost that quarterfinal, not in the game at our ground, but by conceding the 2 goals away from home. And that's, I guess, where people become really frustrated with David Moyes, because God knows what it would have been like if we'd have took the game to them a little bit out in Leverkusen, and maybe even if we came away with just a 1-0 defeat. I mean, we had an early chance. We were stuck outside for the first 15 minutes of the game because of the barriers, etc., the turnstiles. They were so slow in allowing fans to get through. It was about quarter past before all the fans got in, and we missed that first chance by Kudos. But if only we'd have taken the game to them, and then the performance that we put in last Thursday, it does seem like a distant memory now, but the performance that we put in was just absolutely superb. But you're absolutely right, Adam. It came to Sunday and we looked absolutely deflated. We looked tired. We looked mentally sort of withdrawn. And we didn't even, I don't know what the tactics, I can't tell you what the tactics were meant to be against Crystal Palace at the weekend. I know I've read the same rhetoric of, typical David Moyes, made the team sit back. That's why we lost, etc. I don't actually know because we weren't in the game from the first minute. So I don't know what plan of action David Moyes had, and we were watching it. It's not as if, Elise and Eze are good players. I wouldn't mind having both of them at West Ham United. But it didn't look like they had to try too hard against West Ham. I think we were just mentally, some fans were saying, well, they're all on the beach already. They're already on holiday. West Ham United, now that we're out of Europe after last Thursday, that's it. No one cares, and etc. I don't know. It was a really, really odd performance. Was it down to Moyes' tactics? Was it down to the players and their tiredness, etc.? Probably a combination of all. And also, you've got to have a look at some players. Like Lucas Paqueta for the last month or so has been terrible. We know what a great talent he is, but when you've got a player like that who can be the talisman of the team, you're kind of looking for a pie, aren't you? You're kind of looking for a Di Canio performance, and he hasn't shown up for quite a while, which was quite disappointing, to be honest with you. And he was not good. But then again, Emerson didn't play well, and several players didn't play well. Our backline, poor Ogbonna against Crystal Palace, when even I've been calling out over the past few months, well, our best defender has been Ogbonna. Every time he plays, we hardly concede. Well, what a surprise. Poor Ogbonna coming into that team and being part of conceding 5. But our defence is shattered. Our defence is so Sufal looks tired. Zuma was hobbling for most of the game. Ogbonna doesn't have the pace. And it's quite tiring and to actually watch it. It's quite tiring, must be quite tiring to be part of it. Mike. Need to keep the support for our West Ham sisters as well. They suffered similar score. Discussed that, mate. Darlow, we were only 7 goals away from beating our record of 70 goals conceded. Jesus, I didn't realise that. Wow. Graham, evening to you, mate. I hope you're well. Thank you very much. Could be some exciting times ahead, hopefully. Well, I'm going to come on to the manager situation in a moment and talk about David Moyes and talk about, the news about Ruben Amorim and give you a little bit more detail about him in just one moment. Ian, why don't West Ham give Moyes a 4-week break? Good evening to you, Ray. I hope you're well. Good evening, Bruno. How are you? Ultra, how are you, mate? I hope you're well. Imagine Amorim bringing the likes of Gyökeres, Marcus Edwards and Pedro Gonçalves to West Ham United. Gyökeres. Let me see my notes. I think he's only scored 38 goals this season. It's not that good. David, good evening to you. I hope you're well. Moyes, you're doing a good job. James Lamprey, good evening to you. I hope you're well, mate. Bruno, I'm a fan of Sporting. Amorim is the best coach in the world. Values the 20 million. He changed completely my Sporting. We win a title. First time in 20 years. He wins 2 in 4 years. Always great scores. Yes. Welcome, Bruno. Thank you for joining and watching and being part of the show. Yes, you've stolen half of my script because I know he's brought good times back to Sporting after many years. Brian, good evening to you. You convinced Moyes still has the locker room? No, you see, I don't know, is the honest truth. I know it's easy after that kind of performance at the weekend to say that he's lost the dressing room. I'm not so sure that he has. You know, I think there are certain players that need to have a good look at themselves. But I don't think it is. It's easy to put it in that way, and many wouldn't disagree with you, Brian. That given the performance that they put in, I don't think they didn't play for the manager. I think they were just absolutely wiped out, to be honest. Hammer it, but then that's down to our small squad. You know, that's down to David Moyes not having a deep enough squad. If you look at Leverkusen and you look at even Crystal Palace. When they were bringing subs on, they were bringing subs on who were actually making a contribution to trying to change the game. We don't have that. And that is on Moyes. Hammer it. You reckon Paquetá would stay under a coach with this caliber, play him to get the best out of him? I won't lie to you, Hammer it, to be quite honest with you. If we were offered 85 million, if we were offered 65 million, I think I would consider taking it, to be honest. I think Paquetá's head is just not there at the moment. I don't think he's played well that much since his return from injury at the turn of the calendar year. Epic, good evening to you, mate. Good evening to you, Sharky. I hope you're well. Much appreciated. Good evening to you, Dick. How are you? Moyes leaving squad in a right old mess when he clears off. It will be. I won't disagree. I think it's been. Isn't it funny? At the beginning of this season, in the summer, when we brought in Ward-Prowse, Alvarez, Kudus, Mavropanos, etc., we were all patting ourselves on the back and going, what a great squad we've got. You know, added to what we've already got, you know, we're like, oh, wow, this is great. We've got a decent squad that can, you know, could take us far this season. January again. You know, as I'm talked, you know, I remember when the January transfer window was coming up, and I remember doing shows and saying, I hope we don't make the same mistake in this January window as we did 2 seasons ago. And not only did we make the same mistakes, we made worse. You know, we let too many players go. We let, you know, all right, I know Kehrer wanted to go because he wanted to get game time to get back into the German team. I know Fornals, you know, kind of like, you know, felt like he wasn't loved and he wanted to go. I know Ben Rama didn't get on with Moyes and he wanted to go, etc. But to actually have allowed, look, let's cut it back. You know, Kehrer, okay, I think Kehrer's a decent player, but all right, he went. I thought we'd keep at least Ben Rama or Fornals. I didn't think we were going to lose both. And by allowing them both to go, it weakened us immensely. You know, and I was kind of for Calvin Phillips. I said, Phillips might do good. You know, he might come in and he might give us that structure that we need in midfield, etc. alongside Alvarez. It didn't work. And we've left ourselves short. And this is why now we're suffering. Well, now this is part of why we're suffering these massive defeats, because our players are tired. They're tired physically. They're tired mentally. There is no backup. I guess when you know that you're going to automatically be picked, no matter how bad or how well you play, where's the need to put in any more effort? I think Paquetá is that way inclined. He knows he's going to be picked. You know, it's funny because before the game against Palace, before the team was announced, I said, I kind of won't mind if Paquetá was put on the bench. You know, show him how well we did last Thursday without him and put him on the bench. It's a shame because Bowen didn't pass a late fitness test, so Paquetá played. It would have been interesting to see if Bowen had made it. Would Paquetá have been on the bench? Probably not. It probably would have been JWP or someone like that. Stephen, one of the problems is that most contracts don't run out until June the 30th, so not much will be done before then. Moyes will likely still be our manager until then also. Exactly that. I don't think David Moyes, even though we've had worse defeats this season, you know, against Arsenal and Aston Villa, etc., etc. I don't think David Moyes is going anywhere until the season ends. Keith, the amount of goals we've leaked is massive. Does that count? Not in the way that we want it to count. Shaky, that'd be a great shout. I don't know what HH said, Amaret, but it's a great shout, whatever she said. Obsidian, good evening to you, mates. Is Moyes still clinging on? Yes. Vanny, good evening to you. Vonnie, sorry. Good evening to you. I hope you're well. Thank you. Much appreciated. Who else have we got here? Lee. I hope Cornet stays. Moyes hasn't given him a chance. I think it's going to be really, really interesting if David Moyes does leave. If David Moyes does leave, and you hear me say if, because it's still not quite concluded yet, it will be interesting to see how many players will want to stay. I'm wondering if Benrahma might want to come back. I'm wondering if Kehrer, maybe not, because Kehrer didn't settle in England. He wanted to go back abroad, etc. So maybe not him, but Benrahma, he's out on loan. I wonder if he'll want to come back. I've mentioned Flynn Downs. Moyes doesn't fancy him, but maybe a new manager might turn around and go, of course, let's give that young lad a chance. I wonder if any of our other squad members might want to stay. The only ones I'm pretty sure of are going to leave, the big names, if you want to call them big names, are going to be Naifa Gerd and Lucas Paqueta. I'm pretty certain both will leave. Gerd's head's been turned by the Saudi money, and Paqueta, he wants to play Champions League, etc. And we are likely to be out of Europe. And I've been asked, well, what about Bowen and what about Kudus and what about Alvarez? No European football. They won't want to stay. I think they will. I think Alvarez will stay. He's done his first season in the Premier League. It's done him no harm at all. I think Kudus, he's still a bit of a rough diamond, a bit rough around the edges. He's a great player, but one more season. I think he's probably... Kudus, he's probably now worth, we bought him for what, 34, 35 million. I think he's probably now worth about 50, 55. One more season in the Premier League, and if it's as good or better than the one he's had this season, he'll be a 70, 80 million pound player next summer. So I think there'll be a chunk of players, even if we don't make Europe, I think there'll be a chunk of players that will stay. I think Alvarez will stay, Bowen will stay, I think Kudus will stay, and they'll be the nucleus of our team. And in a way, if we're actually out of Europe for one season, that might be a bit of a blessing in disguise. When you've got a small squad and you're trying to compete Thursday, Sunday, it takes its toll, as we've seen. We saw it 2 seasons ago. We've seen it again now. One would argue, well, what about last season? And many would say, because we didn't play, we weren't the Europa Conference. If we made the Europa Conference, I'll bite your hand off for it. But we probably didn't play the same caliber of teams as we have done in the Europa League. Let's not forget, in the Europa League, there are teams aspiring Champions League. In fact, there are teams that came down from Champions League to compete in the latter stages of the Europa League. Europa Conference, slightly different. So maybe the pressure wasn't as great as it was 2 seasons ago and this season as well. But a year out could actually do us the world of good. Help to rebuild the squad, go for a domestic trophy, really push to go for a domestic trophy and try and do well in the Premier League. And my gut tells me that I don't think it will be quite as doom and gloom, whoever's in charge next season, if we're not in Europe. I think we'll have one season out. I think we will compete. We will get a better squad in. We've got to. We've got no choice. We've got too many players out of contract, too many older players, etc., etc. We're going to have to go for at least 6 or 7 players anyway in the summer transfer window. We're going to have to build a new squad anyway, and I reckon they might do well. I think they might do okay, not having to compete in Europe as well. Will Cornet be part of that? I don't know. Possible. Skinner, didn't they tell Cressers he had to pay for his own testimonial? I'd be off to. No, I don't think. Testimonials back in the day, testimonials were for the players because they didn't earn a lot of money, so a testimonial was a good income earner for him. But no, I think the rumor is that it does cost quite a lot of money to hire the stadium for an additional game. Is probably what you may have heard. Bruno Amorim is a perfect coach. Very charismatic, perfect communicator. He works the 3-4-3 system like nobody else. The ideas could be simple but work. It's too hard for the opponents to beat them. Again, you've stolen my script, Bruno. But thank you for that. Good evening, Anthony. I hope you're well. Epic. We need to get rid of these old players, Creswell, Antonio, Fabian. I love them and they've served us well, but I don't disagree with that. We need to get new, fresh players in. Keep Johnson. I'd like to. Maybe, again, if Moyes goes, Johnson might change his mind and sign a new deal. Alan, if our players were a fine wine, with the age of most of them, they would taste like a vinaigrette. Daniela, Still, I think a lot of fans are forgetting that there are two big international competitions this summer. So I think the transfer window is going to be a long, drawn-out one. What's your view? That's a really good point. We've got the Euros, haven't we? And maybe, if we don't do our business very early, then all of a sudden, the big players that we might want are going to be stuck in the Euros, etc. And then we may have to wait until after the Euros before we do our business. That's a really, really good point. Ian, Kevin Keane to take charge of the last 4 games. Wonderful thought, but it won't it won't happen. Moyes will be here until the bitter end. James, and this is why the academy is so important to the homegrown talent. Absolutely. Of course, we've got George Earthy coming through. We could make up the homegrown talent by the squad, the academy squad. But when players are under 21, you don't have to include them, or you don't include them in the senior squad anyway. So you either make them part of the senior squad, or you still got to get eight homegrown over 21 players. I think it's over 21 players. Steve, important to keep the academy trained for when we're back in Europe. Rowley, manager appointment, key signings, including Paqueta, stay or go, get done early. Even if Amorim comes for a couple of seasons before heading to Liverpool, I take a positive reset after Moyes. Well, I've got a theory about, what sort of manager the board are going to want. The board are not going to go for a quick fix. The board are going to look at what happened with Pellegrini a few years back, and they're going to go, we don't want to do that. So if they do go for a foreign manager, I've got theory on who we might go for. But if they do go for a foreign manager, it's going to be a manager that they believe will grow with the club over the next 3 or 4 seasons. The last thing the board want to do, it's in their DNA. They do not want a manager for a year or two. They thought Pellegrini was going to come in and give us a level of success that would have kept in here for maybe 4 years or so. That didn't work out. Probably why Moyes has stayed as long as he has. The last manager, Sam Allardyce, stayed as long as he did. He didn't give us success, but he stabilized us. And I think the board are going to be thinking that. They're going to be thinking, we want to get a manager in for a minimum of a 3-year contract. And they'll be looking at some of the managers, some of the foreign managers, some of the British managers as well. And they're going to ask themselves, will these managers give us that longevity? Will they be able to not only take us to the next level, not only, give us flair football and all that sort of stuff, but at the same time, will they stay for the long term? Because once you have, I think maybe someone like, if Alonso was available, I think West Ham United would bite your hand off. Would Amorim be a long-term replacement? It's possible. He's done 4 years at Sporting. He's proved that he can stay for the long term. So it's quite possible. There is one manager, if he became available, that I think West Ham United would, probably quite a few clubs would bite their hand off to get him. And that is an English manager, and that's Eddie Howe. If Newcastle didn't make Champions League, would that be okay for Newcastle owners to go, well, we'll keep them on a bit longer? I'm not so sure. I think West Ham would look, an ideal choice for West Ham United would be an Eddie Howe. If someone like him was available, they'll go Premier League proven experience. He's had a taste of Europe. He's doing really well under the circumstances, etc., and he'll be there for the long term. Ruben Amorim is in London, apparently. That's apparently the stories that we're being told. Let me go on before I go into any more chat about David Moyes. Now, many are believing that now that we're out of, look, are we going to make Europe through the league? I don't think we are. I think we blew our chances against Fulham, and we definitely blew our chances even further when we lost to Crystal Palace at the weekend. So I think European qualification is a bit of a distant dream now. And that's probably why David Moyes' time is up. I think I said this, when I was checking what's the situation with Moyes at the turn of the year, etc. And I was told it's much the same. I was told again today, it's much the same as it was at the beginning of the calendar year. If we make Europe by some miracle, if we make Europe, you won't like what you're going to hear, but if we make Europe, David Moyes will stay. If we don't make Europe, I think he'll walk. Now, could it be that we make Europe and he decides to leave? Well, we know David Moyes is very proud, and he will turn around and say to everybody, well, I've done a great job because we're back in Europe again. And I think it rests on the last 4 games of the season. But the last 4 games of the season are Liverpool, Chelsea away, and Man City away with Luton at home. Liverpool and Luton at home. It's a tall order. Luton are fighting for their lives. Liverpool want to win the league. Man City want to win the league. And Chelsea want to overtake us in order to get into Europe themselves. So if we put in performances like we did against Leverkusen last Thursday in every single game that we've got left, now that we've got a break rather than Thursday, Sunday, now we've got a game every weekend for the next 4 weeks, etc. If we put performances like we did against Leverkusen, we've got a chance. If we put performances like we did against Fulham and like we did against Crystal Palace at the weekend, we've got absolutely no chance. Might not even get another point. Well, probably will beat Luton, and that might be it. And that's not even definite. So, if anyone listened recently to the Sam, the reason why I believe David Moyes is going to stay until the end of the season is if anyone listened to the Sam Allardyce and Stuart Pearce podcast the other week about Allardyce talking about his tenure coming to an end at West Ham, you can see deja vu happening again because Allardyce was waiting for the board, for Sullivan to talk to him about a new contract, etc., and it wasn't happening, and the time was going on, and then Allardyce went, "Oh, sod it. Whether they ask me to stay or not, it's too late. I'm going to go. Even if they ask me to stay, I'm going to go." And I think this is what's happening now with David Moyes. I don't think Sullivan wants to say to David Moyes, "Look, mate, thanks very much. Pat on the back. You've done great for us. See you later." I think David Sullivan is waiting for Moyes to make a move, rather than Sullivan having to do it himself. It's cowardly. I won't deny that. But I think it's playing out in a similar way to what happened with Sam Allardyce all those, 10 years ago, whenever it was. And I think the same thing is happening. He's waiting for Moyes to make the move. And it will come. It will get to a point where we can't mathematically. Sullivan will only make a decision if we can't mathematically qualify for Europe next season. Otherwise, he's waiting for Moyes to go, "Do you want me to stay or not?" so that Sullivan can give him an answer. But there is a small chance, and I know you won't want to hear it. I haven't got to the comments below, but there's a small chance if we miraculously make Europe next season, David Moyes could stay. Barry, Benrahma may be back if loan not turned into a permanent move. Absolutely. Shaky. Southampton want to keep Downs. He's been mustered all season. He has indeed. Bruno Amorim has a vision. He knows what he wants. What is so important for a coach and for the success of a club. He's like a short squad. Is more easy to work with. Isn't that interesting? Because I'm going to get to Amorim in a minute. And when I was reading some stuff about him, I was thinking to myself, hang on a minute. Is he a version of David Moyes in some ways? Bear with me, and I'll explain what I mean in a minute. Ogyam, good evening to you. Stein currently holding talks with Amorim. That will be a top catch. He plays 3-4-3 when attacking, tends to go with a 5-3-2 when defending. Amorim is also a coach who likes to give youth a chance. You're all stealing my script. I'm not going to read out any more comments about Amorim. Lee, will there be any money left to buy Ivan Toney after we buy Calvin Phillips? We're not buying Calvin Phillips, mate. Lee, good evening to you, mate. I hope you're well. Who else do we have here? Infamy Junkie, good evening to you. Is Amorim really as good as he's being made out to be? Only heard about him this year. Anyone have pros and cons regarding his managerial style? I'll come to them in just a moment when I get through some of the comments. Good evening to you, Daniel. I hope you're well. Would like us to throw a bid in for Ian Matson, homegrown, would be a quality addition. Also, Carl Walker-Peters. Good shouts on both. Good shouts on both. Good evening to you, YouTube backers. Secret Love Child, I hope you're well. Steve, half of the under-18s were missing, playing for the under-21s when they got spanked 8-1. I'm glad. I didn't know that. So I'm glad you corroborated that in some way. David, good evening to you. Still, it's taken you up to the last couple of weeks to finally get the message that we have been loud and clear to me and others for months, if not over 2 years. You know what I'm like. I will When there was something I thought was worth backing, I would. That's what I was saying. But I have wavered. It's not taken me on the last 2 weeks. It's taken me quite a bit of a while now where I've become Moyes indifferent. I'm going to do another one from you, Bruno. You got some interesting comments about Amorim. Only thing I don't like Amorim was the short squad and just the 2 strikers. I always wanted 3. West Ham have only got 1, and he's not even a striker. But the short squad may be for Sporting, not a rich club, or on West Ham may be more easy to buy players. So he works with a small squad as well. Who else have we got down there? Good evening, Razor. I hope you're well. Still confused with Moyes. Easy to work without. The guy is a narcissistic, and we need to wake up, Sully, and get this man out of our club. Toho, was there a match at the weekend? The players did not turn up, did they? They certainly didn't. Jean-Claude, good evening to you. No more park buses next season, fingers crossed. Depends on who we get. Some people still want Graham Potter. I think he's as boring as fuck, to be quite honest with you. And I think he'll probably be worse than Moyes is. NWO, I hope you're well, mates. Small squad cost us. They made 5 subs before Moyes blinked. I agree. Toho, we also like an intermittent broken. We are like an intermittent broken record. When the team attack and play going forward, we all say that's what we can do. Let's do it more often. The next game, Moyes goes ultra defensive every time. See, I don't honestly know that he went ultra defensive at the weekend, against Crystal Palace, because genuinely the game had hardly started before they they smashed the goal in. And I don't know what our game plan was. Trini, how are you, mate? I hope you're well. Daniela, Victor. Still, did you hear what Ward-Prowse said after the game? A club like West Ham should be playing on the front foot. Is a dig at Moyes? Yeah, probably. I think we all know that. We all know. I mean, like I said earlier in the show, look at what we did against Leverkusen and what we're capable of doing as a football team with the players that we've got. When we're on the front foot, we've been absolutely superb this season. When we're sitting back, of course, we're going to get spanked. But like I say, I'm not sort of trying to protect Moyes or anything. I genuinely don't know what the game plan was on Sunday against Palace, because we weren't given a chance to even put it into effect. Who else have we got? Philip, good evening to you. Now reality is set in. No European football. It will be a sort of a blessing in disguise because of the massive rebuild that would inevitably be coming. I agree with you. Good evening to you, Peter. I hope you're well. Make you right. Sullivan's leaking stories to get season ticket sales up. What about Amorim? Could be. Yeah, that's possible. Well, I don't know. I don't know what the percentage of renewals has been so far. Trini, Moyes used of his favourite 9 players for 60 matches a season for the past 3 years. What do you expect? Absolutely. I agree. I've never disagreed with that. And I was worried. I was absolutely worried in January when we didn't strengthen. I said, this is going to come back to bite us. And I'm sure many said the same thing. Mandy, good evening to you. Looks like another January window has come back to bite Moyes. Can't wait to see new players and a new manager and a fresh era and project. Ray of hope. I think all this top manager talk is a ploy by Sullivan to sell season tickets. Yeah. Bruno Gyökeres, best striker I see in Portugal, 24 million, going to sell him for 100 mil. Not sure he'll be worth 100 mil, but he'll be much, much more than what you bought him for, without a shadow of a doubt. How far behind am I? Not too far. Flimmer, the new manager will get rid of Creswell, Ogbonna. Creswell going anyway. Ogbonna going anyway. Fabianski's been offered a year, and I don't think the new manager will want him. Ward-Prowse, not so sure. Souček, wherever Moyes goes, Souček will go. Zuma, I think he has to go. Sufal, I think he'll go. Antonio, probably. Ings, probably. I've got a feeling, and you may laugh, and I know I say a lot of shit stuff sometimes, but I've got a feeling Moyes might go back to Everton, and he'll take with him Souček. He'll bid for Souček. Or wherever he goes, wherever Moyes goes, wherever Moyes manages next, whether it be Celtic or Everton or wherever he goes, I bet he puts in a bid for Souček. Andrew, no European football next season may be a blessing for next season, especially with a new manager incoming to concentrate on the league. I do agree with that. Adam, Paqueta was terrible. Emerson lost it, and Oggy and Zuma, less said the better. Infamy. Doesn't Gyökeres have 100 million release clause attached to him? I don't know, actually. We should have bought him when he was at Coventry City. He was one of the standout players of the Championship last season, and I'm surprised no Premier League club went for him, to be quite honest with you. James, Moyes and the owners are culpable for the state of the club. The coaches can only do so much, and I think that if we need a real change, then we need the owners to bugger off too. Now, I did talk before I sort of went offline for quite a while. One of the last shows I did sort of talk about David Sullivan looking to reduce his ownership of West Ham. Still own, but reduce it. And I asked about that tonight, if there was any update, because apparently, let me give you a bit of a refresh. Apparently, we all know that I've forgotten her name. Vanessa Gold is looking to sell 10% of shares, or was looking to sell 10% of the shares that she inherited from her late father. Now, we haven't had a buy, or West Ham haven't had anyone approach, because people are looking at 10% and going, well, what's the point? I've got no say. Why would I want to do that, etc.? And so what West Ham, or David Sullivan, is doing with the other directors is looking at diluting their ownership of West Ham, coming down to 25%. And they're looking now for an investor to buy 25% stake in West Ham United. So there'll be 3 investors. There'll be Sullivan, what's his name, the Czech bloke, and another investor to come in, all owning 25% shares. There's still no update on that. I asked earlier tonight, is there an update? Do we have any potential buyers? There isn't. But that's what the club wants to do. That's what Sullivan wants to do. And apparently he wants to do that by the summer. So that could be an injection of cash into the club. All right, when you buy shares, it goes to the shareholders, those who are selling their shares. But there could be a possible injection in order to boost our potential kitty. Now, I've worked out this summer, again, regardless of who's going to be at West Ham managing the club, I reckon we could probably generate about 140 odd million pounds in player sales. We'll get about 30 million for Agurd. He's definitely going. I think Paqueta will go. Will we get 85 million for him? Well, that's what's in the clause. Let's say, for argument's sake, we'll get 80 million for him. That's 110 million. We've still got Kehrer to sell, another 10 million. It's 120 million. We've got Benrahma to sell, 15 to 18 million. So you can build yourself up to about 130, 140 million. Apparently, we had 40 million in the bank in January to spend, which we didn't spend. So there's money there in order to buy, in order to invest in the squad. And we need about, 6 players, something like that. But what I said earlier in the show, don't forget, we're going to need homegrown talent to also be part of the squad. So some of that money, and we know that English players, British players, come at a premium. If it is Conor Gallagher, he'll come at around 50 mil. If it is Ivan Toney, he might cost us 60, 65 mil, something like that. That's a large chunk of the money that we'll have available to spend. Chewbackers, I wouldn't mind the goals conceded ratio over the season if we were an attacking team. To be a defensive team, conceding so many goals is too funny. Well, if it wasn't, it is. It's not even hilarious, is it? But I get your point. Absolutely. Danny Bear, good evening to you. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Thank you for watching, mate. I've got to say hello to Stuart, who came to me in the game against Leverkusen last week, said a quick hello as I was sort of just coming through. And there's several others who came up to me going to Palace, etc., and said hello, etc. Thank you all for saying hello. My apologies for not taking all your names to give you a proper shout out. James, every year we keep kicking the age of the squad issue down the road. That's on the owners and Moyes. Don't disagree. We should not be looking at giving, who had the policy? I think it used to be Man United used to have a policy of, if you get to 30, or was it Chelsea? If you get to 30, you'll only be offered a 1 year at a time extension. You won't be offered any more than that. We should have done that. We should have implemented that ourselves over the last few years, and not, gave Antonio a 4-year deal and all this sort of stuff. It's silly to do things like that, because they get to an age where they can't deliver anymore. Trini, it's not about the dressing room. His small squad mentality has shattered the players. It's not rocket science. I don't want any players who want to play in Europe. They need to want to play for us. Good point. Very good point. Victor, any truth West Ham will make a final contract offer to Ben Johnson? Yes, they want him to stay. West Ham United want Ben Johnson to stay. They'd rather not let him go for nothing to the likes of, and I said it earlier in the show, to the likes of Crystal Palace, who will get him for nothing. Yeah, they want him to stay. I want him to stay. I like Ben Johnson, 24 years of age, West Ham man. You know, why would we want to let him go? I think it'd be silly to let him go, because all we're going to have to end up doing is going out and buying a right back and probably paying more wages than we're offering Johnson. So give him a decent wage and keep him. Who else have we got here? Do forgive me. You know what it's like. I do try to get in as many comments as I can, but it ain't always easy to do so. Mandy, small squad in a European campaign does not work. He saw that before when you got beat in the semi-finals, but again, his stubbornness has cost us. Yeah, I agree. Rowley, surely Paqueta with a progressive coach who speaks his language has got to be worth a look. It's possible. It's possible. Look. It's very possible that if no one stumps up 85 million, we can tell everyone to sod off. You know, if anyone triggers that 85 mil clause, we have to let Paqueta talk to that club. Will anyone trigger the 85 mil? Man City, if they're still interested, maybe Paris Saint-Germain is what another team that I'm hearing that could potentially afford him. He might go there. He's played in the French league before. But then they didn't go for him when we were getting him for 57 million. But I think there was interest by PSG back then as well. They're the only two teams I can think of this moment in time that could possibly afford to buy Lucas Paqueta at 85 million pounds. Man City, Paris Saint-Germain. Anyone else? Well, I can't see Real Madrid paying that money for him. Can't see Barcelona doing it. Can't see any of the German clubs doing it. So maybe he's going to be limited for choice. And if neither Paris Saint-Germain or Manchester City offer 85 million for him, he could stay at West Ham by default. Would it be good if he came in under Amorim? Maybe. I think I've been a little bit frustrated with Paqueta since he's been back from injury, because you want him to do well. You know how well he can do. And I hear what people say, oh, it's because of our style of play and that's why he's pissed off and he's not delivering. I don't buy all that, to be quite honest with you, you know, because we can be defensive minded and still allow our attacking players to attack. Paqueta doesn't have to drop deep. He's one of the players that doesn't need to drop deep. And I'm not so sure, to be honest with you. But anyway, Apache, give Stein full control of transfers and all will be hunky-dory. David Green. Still, again, we only played well in the first half against Leverkusen. Moyes, as per, didn't react or held back to keep it tight. You're still undecided about Moyes, aren't you? No. I've said what I've said about Moyes, and it's not about what I think. I think he will go. I don't think we were held back. I think Leverkusen played a better game in the second half. I think we were knackered in the second half. We wanted to go forward. We didn't have the stamina, the energy, or the depth in squad. Bruno, Sporting have a team so badly in quality and mentality. Amorim changed all the mentality. He creates great environment in the group. Very easy player. He's a player like Amorim. James, we were great at set pieces and the counter-attacking football was working. Get rid of a set-piece coach and the rest fell to shit. That's a good point, Graham. Moyes might stay until the end of June. We could still take Amorim once into account and go after him. Then, so when he arrives, the players are already here. Yeah, getting ready for it. But like I asked earlier in the show, would Amorim leave a side that's about to go into the Champions League for West Ham United? It's interesting. It's a balance. Premier League without European football, Sporting, Portuguese League with Champions League football. It's an interesting one. You know, I think many might say, well, of course, Champions League. Some managers have aspirations to manage in the Premier League. So it's quite possible that Amorim might be tempted. Trini, a new manager would mean all those players rethink. Paqueta will go, but we need to make sure it is for the money we want. Absolutely agree. Kaiser, sadly, Moyes won't get the best out of Kudus. I think Kudus has been decent, but I think Kudus has found out for himself that the Premier League isn't a breeze. And I think he's still learning his trade. I think Kudus will come good next season. I think he'll be one of the players of the Premier League next season, without a doubt. Bill, good evening to you, mate. I hope you're well. Only just managed to sit down to the voice of West Ham reason. Thank you very much, mate. Apology if you already covered this, but was Crystal Palace game a lack of interest or fatigue after the last European encounter? I think there might have been some players, a bit of lack of interest. Paqueta, maybe Emerson. They weren't tired because they didn't play against Leverkusen. But I think I talked about it earlier, not only physical fatigue, but also mental fatigue for some of the players, to be quite honest with you, Bill. Daniel, didn't Sully really upset the Sporting owner with Carvalho? Oh, yes, of course he did. Yeah, that was a few years back, wasn't it? Doubt they would let their manager join us. Well, his get out clause, his clause in his contract is something like about 12, 13 million pounds. Let's go into, we've been talking about him for the last 10 minutes or so. So let's go into Amorim. Is he a realistic target? I hate to burst your bubble, but at this moment in time, when people are talking about him being in London, etc., that has not been corroborated. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he is over here and talking to West Ham United, but I'm not quite so sure. 39 years of age, ex-Benfica player. He's been manager of Sporting since 2020, and he's only been in management for about 5 years. This is his 4th club that he's managed. He's got a contract with Sporting until 2026, and apart from winning 1 trophy with his previous club, Braga, he has taken Sporting back to new levels, or back to levels that they were before. As Bruno's been, what's his guy's name? We've forgotten it already. As Bruno's been saying, he got Sporting their first league championship for 19 years when he won it back in 2020-21 season. It was their first league title for 19 years. He's also won the League Cup 2 seasons in a row, and he's also won the Portuguese Super Cup as well. He's received plaudits for the brand of football that he plays, and it's only, the sort of football that only West Ham fans can dream of. He's known for his good communication skills with his squad, good tactical knowledge, and a flexibility in play. So he primarily plays a 3-4-3 formation, but when the team are under attack, he reverts to a 5-3-2 formation. And here's the thing that made me giggle when I was reading about Amorim earlier on. Bruno made one point about him. He likes to play with a small squad. That's very similar to David Moyes, but he also does the low block. And that made me giggle. I thought, how could it possibly be that Amorim is a fan of the low block? But it's a bit different because the minute they get the ball, then they revert to a 3-4-3 formation. They use almost like wing backs out wide. They stretch the teams that they're playing against. And they're very progressive. When they defend from the front, they've got 3 attacking players who defend for them from the front. But when they do lose the ball, they revert to a 5-3-2. But that made me laugh. Not only did it make me laugh that he likes to play with a small squad, but it also made me laugh that he likes emphasis on the low block. But what's the difference with Amorim? Well, as Bruno's already said in the chat earlier on, he's got no qualms with throwing in youth players into the mix, as well as alongside older players as well. In his squad, he's got a 36-year-old keeper who's currently injured, Antonio Adan, 36 years of age. He's got 2 centre-backs. Luis Neto is 35, and Sebastian Coates is 33. However, in contrast, he's also played a 19-year-old left winger, Afonso Moreira. He's played a 19-year-old defensive midfielder, Dario Eusebio, and a 20-year-old centre-back, Osmunde Diomandi. And not just for the odd game, but he's played them quite extensively this season. But his star man is the player that he bought from Coventry City last season, Victor Gyökeres. 25 years of age, Swedish international. He scored a whopping 38 goals in his first season for Sporting Lisbon, or Sporting CP, as they're better known as. And so he doesn't mind mixing the youth with the experience. Great. If Moyes did that, I think we'd all be a little bit more happier with him. But think about it. He does low block when they don't have the ball, and he also plays with a small squad. The only difference is he does mix youth with experience. Can we attract him? Look, there are these rumours that he's in London at the moment talking to us. Do I believe it? Because I haven't managed to get it corroborated, I can't tell you for sure. Would I like him to come to West Ham United? I think he'd be an interesting proposition. Do I think he'd be successful? I think the one thing that a lot of managers, foreign managers and foreign players find when they come to the Premier League is it's a lot different to what anyone can tell them it's like. So would he be able to cut his teeth? It might take him a season or two. Would West Ham fans allow that? We've become expectant, haven't we? Why not? Why shouldn't we be expectant? We've had 3 seasons of Europe. It's become quite expectant to have players and managers, etc., to hit the ground running. Would we afford Amorim the time to get it right for West Ham? I don't know. And this is what I say going back to what I said earlier on. When West Ham United are going to look for a new manager, they're not just going to go out and get the Lopetigues or the Mourinhos or any other manager who's likely to be here for a season or 2 seasons at most. West Ham don't want that. West Ham are going to want a manager that's there for the long term. A manager that they believe with Steiden can build a squad over the years, 2, 3, 4 years. Remember what Steiden said when he first came to West Ham? There's a project here. It's a 4-year project, etc. West Ham United are going to want a manager to go along that ride. They're not going to get a quick fix. So these quick fixes, like the current Fulham manager, his name skips me, Mauro, whatever. I don't think. Sarri, the ex-Chelsea manager, I don't think. Lopetegui, the ex-Wolves manager, I don't think. I don't think those managers are going to fit the narrative that West Ham board are looking for. They're going to want a manager that's going to come in for at least 3-4 years and build the squad alongside Steiden for it to become regularly successful. Would Amorim fit that bill? Possibly, quite possibly. But will we as fans give him the time? Well, not only him, but any future manager. Will we give any future manager the time to build, and maybe have to rebuild, maybe be out of Europe for a season, maybe even 2 seasons before it gets better again? I don't know. It's an interesting one that only you guys can answer, to be quite honest with you. Bonnie, recently Liverpool were being linked with Amorim and De Zerbi, whilst we were being linked with the likes of Cooper. Found this totally disrespectful. Would be great if Amorim came to us. Cooper, forget. Potter, I really, really hope we do not go for Graham Potter. I do not think it's going to be any better for us than David Moyes. Andrew, Kudus is slowly becoming Moyes, needing new managers to come in and perform an exorcism to rid him of it. Look, sorry about that. I knocked the mic. The only thing that David Moyes has done is he's put Kudus out on the left. And I've always said, Kudus has never played out on the left in his career. I think next season we will get a left-sided attacking player. I think Kudus is going to be playing in the middle next season. I think it's going to be Bone out right. I think there's going to be another player out on the left side. I think Kudus is going to be in the middle, and we'll have a new striker as well. So is he being Moyes? Look, he was the best of the worst in terms of who we played out on the left. Look how many players David Moyes has used to try and sort of get it right on the left-hand side. Kudus was the best of the lot. And I think he's done exceptionally well. But I know that's not his usual role. Black Country. Sullivan upsets all European clubs. That's where the name dildos come from. Good evening to you, Clive. I hope you're well. Grealish would be adding another homegrown player to the ranks too. You know what? Grealish is not a bad shout, to be honest with you. I won't lie. I think it's possible that Grealish might be sold by Man City. Maybe a sweetener for Paqueta. Would you take Grealish with money and Paqueta? Would you take Grealish and money to let Paqueta go to City? Interesting. I'm sure Shearer will be lobbying to install Moyes as a new Newcastle manager. Infamy. Have we actually had a natural striker that's played for us consistently well in the past 10 years? I can't think of one. You can't, because there hasn't been one. Lee, I'm very concerned about the upcoming Liverpool-Man City games. It could be a painful watch to see us ship more goals, a desperate end to the Moyes era. And it could become that, to be quite honest with you, especially if we've allowed Crystal Palace to knock 5 past us. What's going to happen with a slightly resurgent Liverpool and Man City, both going for the league title? Sean, I think the manager situation is now done. Hence, the board aren't coming out and backing Moyes. Steiden's trip to watch games in Brazil. Wesley at Corinthians, left winger. Good. Yeah, I forgot all about Steiden. He went out there, didn't he? William, Earthy, Marshall, and Scars for next season. Earthy, yes. Marshall, maybe. Scars, not so sure. I know Scars has been injured this for quite a bit of this season, but not sure if he might be ready yet. James, I can see that Everton are going to sack Dyche and Moyes will go back there. I can too. I can see that as well. DiCanio. Amorim is fake news. Steve Bruce has been seen in Chigwell kebab shop. Here we go. Gonna be confirmed. Bruno, I can see Amorim going to West Ham. He loves this kind of project. Rebuild a club for 3 or 4 years with less pressure and to go to a bigger club is a very smart person. You've just confirmed what I was wondering, Bruno. Thank you for your comments, by the way, Bruno. Really appreciate it. It's great to have a fan, especially when we're talking about their manager, to come on and give a lot of positive information. So I really appreciate that, Bruno. That's the question I asked. You know, is Amorim the sort of person that would see out a 3-4 year project? You seem to have just confirmed that, so much appreciated. Howard, Radio 6 music always in the house. Old hippie that loves music. You've gone off on a tangent again. Valano, good evening to you. The board of West Ham are a disgrace. Why? Explain yourself. Steve, head coach, not manager. Otherwise, no point in having a technical director who's affected. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, the next person coming in is likely to be a head coach. You're absolutely correct. Lee, I'm glad West Ham gave so many of our fans great nights home and away. It's so easy to criticise and judge a team, but come on, you Irons. We are massive. Always great to be positive. Lee, Ruben Amorim sounds great, but Liverpool are looking for a new manager. I think Man United will boot Ten Hag out. It won't be easy to attract a top boss. It would be his first Premier League job if Amorim came to West Ham, and maybe he might see it as being able to cut his teeth for 3 or 4 years before he goes to a so-called bigger club. Who knows, by then, we might be as big as them. DJR, good evening to you. Graham Potter could be a nice fit, more progressive, homegrown, somewhat proven. I totally disagree. If there's any manager that I really don't want to come to West Ham United, I'm afraid to say is Graham Potter. And the board are not interested in Potter either, to be honest. Andrew, Audrey Roberts was a terrible appointment. Lack of foresight in that appointment. Now we have Tim in place. I feel Audrey Roberts I feel more confident we will get it right this time. Howard, I had Cry Africa by Ben. You're all talking about music. I'll let you carry on. NWO, 4th time this season we have let in 5 goals. For a defensive-minded manager, that's pretty terrible, isn't it? Infamy. If Everton get relegated, could Dominic Calvert-Lewin be a viable low-cost transfer and better than having Ings and Antonio? I'm not convinced on Calvert-Lewin, and he's very injury-prone as well at the moment. Back up, maybe. William, I'm sick of listening about Moyes. Just get him gone. Jog on, David. Black Country, Amorim would be a great signing. Believe it when he signs on that dotted line. Robin, Moyes looks like my tortoise after being in hibernation for 5 years. Oh, come on. Don't you feel sorry for him? Oh, dear. Trini, we won't make Europe. The teams around us have games in hand and much easier games than us. I agree. We won't make Europe. I know that. Toha, we did not make Europe through the league last time either. True. We had to win a competition. He has been force-feeding Europe down our throats, and I agree. He will get a new contract if we get into Europe. We will. If by some miracle we get into Europe again, he'll be here for another year or two. I'm sorry to say. Black Country, no still, not that one, old one again. 4 more games. I'm sorry, I don't make these up. You know, it's what I'm told. Do I believe it? I think Moyes has had enough, to be quite honest with you. I do think he is going. Lee, Moyes ruined his legacy. He should have gone after the Europa Conference League win when his stock was high. I doubt he'll ever get a Premier League job again. I think he will get a Premier League job again. But like I said before, I don't think he'll be as big as the West Ham job, to be honest with you. Cockney boy, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. I've been Moyes out for 18 months, but would applaud him after the Luton game for stabilising the club. But it's definitely time to move on for all parties concerned. Mandy, we won't beat Luton if they're fighting for survival. Bruno Amorim, make a revolution in Portugal with his 3-4-3 formation. Never a Portuguese coach plays this system before, and now all teams play the system of 3 or 5. I'm beginning to like Amorim even more and more. Who else have we got here? Anthony. HH, if Moyes didn't want to stay, surely he would walk by now. He's a proud man. He won't leave until the end of the season. Toha, Luton had a bunch of cheerleaders at West Ham. Well, their manager anyway. Let's scroll down. Moisaurus's Emperor's clothes with no clothes. Good evening, mate. I hope you're well. I have been traveling in Antarctica for 18 months, so Moyes is still the manager. Infamy. It's definitely high risk. His recent injury issues, but he could be a better and cheaper option. Are you talking about Calvert-Lewin? I'm not convinced on Calvert-Lewin. I'm still way behind, so I'll try and catch up. Do forgive me. I'm going to miss out a few. Tony, I have to go still. Playing in golf in 26 degrees Sydney today. I'll watch the rest of the show. Much appreciated. I hope you enjoy the golf. Don't get sunburnt, will you, mate? Chewbackers. You can't really have a small squad in the Premier League because the league is too intense. It doesn't make sense to me. But then maybe that's how Amorim might play it as well. Maybe he'll realise that he can't have a small squad. Keith, still have a chance at Europe. Kudus apparently has a really good voice. Bowen plays guitar, and Areola is learning the French horn. Infamy. Calvert-Lewin's best season was 2021 under Ancelotti when he had 16 league goals. This was season before he was injured for most of the next 2 seasons. I wouldn't want Calvert-Lewin. King Robert, good evening to you. Moyes deserves a proper send-off. Accountability needs to be held at the players who are leaving a sour taste in the mouth. I've suggested this as well, but it's a bit of both. Small squad. Some players are already on holiday. Some players are really knackered for having been overplayed. Lee, imagine having more than 30% possession next season. I think I'll fall off my seat. Good evening, True Culture. Just got onto the stream. Don't know if this was asked before. Any players you got in mind that West Ham should get on next window? At this moment, I never think about transfers, to be quite honest with you. But I did say earlier on in the show that we're going to need to replenish our homegrown talent. We could lose quite a few homegrown players from the squad at the end of this season. And the 2 players that I've been told about that we have an apparent interest in are Conor Gallagher and Ivan Toney. True, not true, I don't know. But that's what I was told. We were interested in Conor Gallagher in the summer, and we didn't manage to get him. And I know he's Chelsea captain now, etc. But Chelsea are going to have to sell. They're going to have to sell because of FFP. And Ivan Toney, as I mentioned earlier as well, I think he's shot himself in the foot with regards to bigger clubs. He's also 28 years of age. The likes of Liverpool, etc., might look at him and go, no, he's not for us. And the next level down is a team like West Ham. So I could potentially see us getting Ivan Toney. Andrew, Bowen, Kudus, Alvarez, Mavropanos, Areola is a very good spine for the incoming manager to build around. I agree. And Mavropanos, bit hot and cold, but he's improved, but he's still got that error in him. But then I guess when you're playing alongside Zuma and probably trying to cover for him half the time, I don't know. Am I being unfair against Zuma? We've done that one, King Robert. Thank you. Kaiser. With Amorim or Fonseca, we would keep players like Scamacca and Hilaire. We would have kept players like Scamacca and Hilaire. I don't fancy Fonseca. I talked about Fonseca a few weeks back, and Amorim sounds like a far better prospect than Fonseca for me. Nikos, good evening. Galinita. Hello, mate. How are you? Anyway, that's my Greek all fucked up. Know anything about us moving to a new football ground? No, we're not moving to a new football ground in Essex. Let's get that out. I mean, I've been away and not done an update on this, but we are not going to be moving from the London Stadium anytime soon. We are looking to buy land in Essex in order to build a new training complex and potentially moving from Chadwell Heath and Rush Green, etc., combining it all under one umbrella, under one roof, so to speak, But no, we're not looking to move to a new stadium. Shaky. Socek needs the fans to G up the players. 65 grand a week. He can G up himself. Victor, if Sullivan wants to sell more season tickets, all he needs to do is let Moyes go. Elvis Broadhurst, good evening to you, mate. Moyes deserves a standing ovation. People singing "Sacked in the Morning" are a disgrace. Who else have we got? Anton, where is he? He came and ruined my show the other night. I wonder if any of you saw that. He came and ruined my review of the Leverkusen game. He barged in. How are you, Anton? Football with Brownie. How are you, mate? Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Brad, good evening to you, mate. I think the next time we're getting a drubbing and look to the bench and see no one, the crowd should bang out the Said Benrahma and Pablo Fornal's chants. Good point. Flyfox, good evening to you. I agree, Hammerette. If we'd have left after the trophy, he'd be fondly remembered for what he's done. Now he's killed any goodwill he has left from the fans. King Robert, home at Luton is a must-win. Moyes' last game at home. Good point. Charles, how many players think we keep? I think for Bowen, Kudus, Alvarez, I think 4. Yeah, I've said it earlier on in the show. I think the big players that we're likely to lose is going to be Agard, because I think Agard has wanted to leave for quite some time, and Paqueta as well. Do I think the likes of Bowen, Kudus, Alvarez, Areola will leave? No, I don't. Excuse me 1 second. I don't think any of those players will leave, to be quite honest with you. And that's even without European football. Andrew, Moyes will come back for Antonio, Ward-Prowse and Socek if he goes to another Premier League club. I think that's quite I think that's quite possible. Cal, good evening to you. Liverpool FC has a commercial office in London. Amorim might be going there. Apparently, Liverpool, they've got an interest in him, but I think they're looking elsewhere. But that's a really good point, Cal. Really good point. Dougie. Still, look at the bench. They all have to go. Don't disagree. Let's scroll down. Anton. The rebuild is monumental. Mr. Stardom will have to earn his wage. What I was saying earlier in the show, Anton, is that we need homegrown talents. We could lose quite a lot of homegrown players. The one thing might concern me slightly with Stuyden is, does he know the English market enough to be able to buy the sort of homegrown players that we need? Montana. Homegrown, we should raid the Championship. Coventry, Sunderland, Plymouth, stacked with talent. Get Tim on it. Good point. Moisaurus. I want Moyes to be the next Everton manager. Would be funny to do the double over his team next season. What if they beat us? What then? Fly. I've been a big fan of Johnson. I'd be gutted if he leaves without getting a fair shot of being in the team. Well, I was saying about this earlier. Could it be that if David Moyes leaves, that one or two of our players might decide to stay? Could, for example, Ben Johnson decide that he will sign a new deal? Hammerett. We need a few old players, of course, for the level head, etc. But our back five against Leverkusen had an average age of 168. Elvis, the way the ref was dishing out cards against Leverkusen at the rate, we wouldn't have even had 11 players v Roma. I'm really honest with you. I didn't want to talk about it because it feels like a lifetime ago now. But the refereeing in the second half, I said this in my review after the game, left an awful lot to be desired, to be quite honest with you. It felt like a completely different referee came out for the second half. I don't want to call refs corrupt, but it felt odd. It felt really odd, some of the decision-making that was going on, etc., against us. Bazza, good evening to you. Moves gone, Benny back. Moyes gone, Benny back. Johnson stays. Pac-Man off to City. You could be right on all counts. Victor, how far behind am I? Almost half an hour. Paqueta won't be going anywhere if betting scandal against him has not been sorted. I talked about this, long time ago. Their solicitors, his solicitors, sorry, are going to push for this to all be concluded. They're going to threaten the FA, taking them to court if they don't conclude it by the summer. I can see that being pushed. I think Paqueta will want to go. Ryan, keep Johnson, get Tosin from Fulham. Good shout. Is he on a free? I didn't know that. And I quite like the look of the left back as competition for Emerson. The Luton left back puts a big dent in the homegrown players' hole. Good shout. Kaiser, I can see Pep changing his mind about Paqueta like he did with Rice. I wouldn't disagree with you. It's quite possible. And Paqueta might end up having to move abroad. And like I said earlier on, the only team that quite possibly might go for Paqueta, it could be PSG. Andrew, I like Paqueta, but he does seem like he could be a disruptive force if his head isn't right, like we are seeing just now. Good shout. Robin, do you reckon Ward-Prowse will get the elusive free kick goal in every of 4 matches? He's got to, hasn't he? You know, another 1 or 2 just to beat that record and maybe win a game or 2. Steve, good point still. Glasner, unlikely to get Europe with Palace. He won't. He'll keep them mid-table. Is that what we want? This is a good point. Glasner is meant to be a very good manager. He's done the treble over David Moyes, the 2 games when he was manager of Eintracht Frankfurt and now against Crystal Palace. But will Glasner get Crystal Palace above West Ham United next season? I don't know. I asked Sean about that, Shaky, about Edin Terzic, and he went, no, there's no interest in him. And even though it was Sean that put it on Twitter, there you go. Toha, didn't Antonio have a bet with Wilson that he would score more goals this season? That may be his current motivation. I don't care what motivation there is, so long as he gets the goals. King Roberts, are people surprised at the Palace game? Glasner could read Moyes ever since Frankfurt game 2 seasons ago. Let's scroll down to see if I can catch up. How far behind am I? Still away. So do forgive me. Moyes is going to Liverpool. Andrew, don't get too carried away. Sullivan getting worried about season ticket sales, a ploy to get us excited and enthusiastic for next season. I don't think Sullivan's too worried about season ticket sales just yet. Steve, hello, mate. I hope you're well. All these manager rumours, just like the summer transfer rumours, are draining and a waste of time. Chill, go on holiday for 2 months and be happy. Ryan, if we get Amorim, does that mean we won't get Maguire? Oh, God. There's a price to pay for everything. Kaiser, Liverpool fans think Amorim isn't good enough for them. Fair play, we'll have him. Mr. Peters, how are you? If Paqueta goes, I will miss him. No, you won't. With him constantly falling over and giving the ball away, I'll have to watch the actual game. I hope you got home all right last night, Paul. 6 times 9, Danny. Also, Liverpool might be the level he aspires to after his next move to bridge the gap. I think we have a decent chance. I do. I think it's going to be an interesting one to see what happens. I just watched a video on Claret and Booze with Nick, who reckons Amorim was always the number one. Amorim was always the number 1 target. I can't corroborate. I don't know. Maybe Nick has got different information to what I have. I asked about it earlier, and I think Amorim is definitely on the list. Will we get him? There's a good chance. Will he come to us? Who knows? Fly. Moyes played Ward-Prowse on the left wing, Ben Johnson rather than give Cornet a shout. This year's been a real roller coaster, and he got them both wrong, didn't he? Trini, Jack Grealish. No way. I want that diver. I don't want that diver at our club. His stats are a joke, as he has contributed nothing. Fair play. Alex Noodle. Could it realistically be worse? Roy Hodgson's attractive at this point. Oh, God. David Boyes, West Ham will never be any good, whoever you get. I don't know who you support, but thanks for adding to my numbers of watching the show, mate. Michael, I think we should keep Downs. I agree. Full season with Southampton will prepare him for being a good squad player. We need the homegrown players. Absolutely. What I said earlier on. Michael P, he should have gone 2 years ago. Apart from Avram Grant, he is the worst. I can't say that he is, to be honest. The stats don't prove that. I can see why fans would say that, but he ain't. King Roberts, give me a rest about the foreign manager curse. The only successful British manager is Ferguson. Rest of foreign is a good, that's a good shout. That's a good point. Montana, Rob has done a good job, though Luton have been on the end of hirings recently. Decent, he's brave, isn't he, as a young manager? Fat Frank, good evening to you. I thought Arne Slot was a good candidate, seeing as the head coach is also Dutch. I think that's a wish rather than the reality. Charlie, even if we don't get Amorim, whoever started and picks, I will be happy and trust the process. Eric John, good evening to you. Calvert-Lewin, no thanks. Why Everton are down the league. I'm not convinced on him either. Montana. I have a feeling Tim and Sully have put out this news to fill the fans' response. I still feel optimistic, even if we don't get Amorim. I have a feeling we'd end up with Fonseca. I don't fancy Fonseca. I did a show, like I said, I can't remember how long ago, maybe 2 months ago now, and I was talking about Fonseca. And the more I was reading about him, the more I was like, I'm not so sure I'd want him at West Ham United. Like I said earlier on in the show, Montana, I think West Ham, the board will go for someone who can be there for the long term. I don't think someone like Fonseca will be. I could be wrong, which is why I don't think the likes of Lopetegui will be here for the long term, etc. Mojo, good evening to you. Would I want to witness a Moyes rebuild? No, thanks. In that respect, I agree with you. I think, we've had that opportunity to rebuild the squad so many times. And I remember when Moyes came back for the second time, he said something like, it's something like I need 5 transfer windows or 4 or something like that to have my own squad. He's had much more than that. He's had about 7 or so, and we still don't have a decent squad. Montana. That Thiago Motta is good too. Roma got slapped. Steve, sorry, Stel. My head coach point came across as very poncy. You know what I take no offense. Don't worry, mate. You know me. Andrew. Moyes' situation is his own making, completely self-inflicted. He just would not change. Don't disagree. 26 degrees is night temperature in Trinidad. All right. It's fucking cold here. I've just turned the heating off. Schizo, how are you, mate? I hope you're well. Hope everyone, I'm all good. Late to the party. We'll recap in a bit. Much appreciated. P-Gads, what players do you want to stay? What players do I want to stay? I want, I want Johnson to stay. I want, do I want Paqueta to stay? Probably not. Bowen to stay, absolutely. Kudus to stay. Alvarez to stay. Areola to stay, definitely. I guess the usual suspects. Montana. When we make a documentary about Moyes' time here, he will have plenty of regret of his own making too. Flyfox, sorry. I thought Moyes slagging off the players and not taking any of the blame after Palace was disgraceful. He ain't going to get a lot of plaudits for doing that, is he? Chewbackers, I don't know. I think Calvert-Lewin is something. Yeah, injury prone. He was a very good player. He was a very good player. I think he needs a fresh start. Could turn out to be a shrewd signing. Backup, maybe. As our main striker, I'd rather not. Trini, I want Agüero to stay and form a high press defense with Mavro under a new manager. I think Agüero's. I think Mavropanos has got mistakes in him. Well, we've seen that. I think Agüero has too. I'm not so sure. I was really pleased that we got Agüero. I'm not so sure anymore, to be honest with you. Robin, we was linked with that former Coventry player at the end of last season. Gyökeres, yeah. What a snip at 20 mil that Moyes turned down. I don't know if he turned him down. I know we were linked to him, but yeah, what a big mistake. Montana, I saw better retractable seating. Why didn't they invest in that? That was one of the original. Plans. The retractable seating. It wasn't us who designed the final stadium. We didn't have any input, but that retractable seating is what should have been at the stadium. Let's scroll down. Am I catching up? Yes, I am. Thank you, Flimmer. If you're new to the channel, do hit the subscribe button, the bell notification to let you know when I'm next on, and also the like button as well. Thank you for reminding me, Flimmer. Much appreciated if you do all those 3. Trini, it would be ironic if Patman goes to City just as they get sanctioned. Well, there's that as well. Andrew, I love Paqueta, but his attitude hasn't been great. The last few games has been a liability too. I totally agree. Stephen, I would take Ellis Sims from Coventry and their right back as a squad players. I don't know much about them, but I didn't watch the semi-final either, so I can't say. Richard, Paqueta tried to get himself sent off against Leverkusen in the first leg by wildly kicking the opposing player, but only got booked, got yellow, still got suspended. He doesn't want to be here. Trini, Glasner and Palace are way behind us in the league. We made them look good when they're not all that really. They've got some good players, but I agree. Daniela, Still, rumour has it City are looking at Bruno Guimaraes now. I've never been 100% convinced that Paqueta is off to City. If Paqueta is not off to City, he will go back abroad. And like I said earlier, I think the quite likely team that might be able to go for him are PSG. David M. Things I find unacceptable is David not doing his homework, bringing Haller and Danny Ings that does not usually play up front on his own. He didn't get Haller, he inherited Haller, but he did get Danny Ings, and apparently Danny Ings was a gift from Sullivan for him. So, I mean, there's a lot that he does wrong, but not everything is his fault. Let's scroll down. Steve. It all went downhill after appointing Macari. Should have stayed in his chip shop. Aaron, I think it'll be very telling on what manager we get on how much control Scarf Man has. That's a really good shout. You know, if it's someone that he might fancy, and we, if we don't get him, then how much has Steiden have? How much of a say does he have? Toha, what does Wiggy say? I'm with Wiggy on the halfway line conspiracy. Don't encourage him. Richard, every year Sullivan puts out crap about season tickets. He's like a second-hand car salesman or a dealer salesman. You decide. David M. Do you think season ticket holders have the right to know whether David be the boss next season before the renewal deadline? Right. Whether David Moyes is manager or not, I'm going to renew regardless, because I'm going to want to go to games. Do I want David Moyes to do what he's done over the last couple of seasons? Probably not. But will that stop me from renewing my season ticket? No, to be honest with you. Keith, sorry, I was doing something and couldn't comment regarding the ref on Thursday. Something happened at halftime that changed his game in the second half. I'm convinced of it. There was an agenda. I totally and utterly agree with you. Andrew, Tim was in Brazil and is apparently chasing Corinthians winger Wesley Gasova. Talks have begun, and Ipswich highly rated left back Leif Davis. That's possibly true. I know he was out there, but I don't know. But I will take your word for it, Andrew, that he was looking at Wesley Gasova. Lee, I don't think any of us know what our current players are capable of under Moyes. We'll find out when we get a new manager in. Chewbackers, I have an affection for Luton. I hope they can pull it off. They're an interesting team, aren't they? Nando, good evening to you. Great. Thank you very much. What do you think of Eddie Howe if Newcastle give him the flick? Said it earlier in the show. I've got a theory, and I know it could be far-fetched. If Newcastle let Eddie Howe go because they don't make Champions League, I'm pretty convinced West Ham will pull out all the stops to get Eddie Howe. Pretty much convinced. Would that be a Steiden kind of manager? Maybe. Eddie Howe is not a bad manager who knows the Premier League. He uses the youth, etc. He mixes it up, etc., etc. He's had a glimpse of European football and so on and so forth. I honestly do think that quite possibly, if Eddie Howe becomes available at the end of the season, the West Ham board will drop everything and go straight for him. I believe that. Fat Frank. Every signing Moyes wanted has gone down the toilet. Leave Steiden for the cooking. Montana, Stel, whose side are you on? Forest or VAR? They're fighting a good fight. Oh, I'm on Forest's side, without a shadow of a doubt. We've had our fair share of shit decisions. So definitely, VAR has either got to be completely revamped or got to go. It absolutely has. It's ruined the game of football. Absolutely. Mandy, news coming in that we're in talks with Ruben Amorim. Thank you for that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known that, Mandy. Flawless. Good evening to you. Amorim will not come to us. We need to stick to Moyes. He's done so much for us. Chewbackers, Ralph, this will be controversial. If Luton beat us and it means them staying up, I wouldn't mind so much. Ooh. David Granger. Amorim plays 3-4-3. Are you play 3-4-3 since Tim came in? No, not since Tim came in. We've been playing 3-4-3 in the youth well before that, David. But good point that it's similar to the senior team as well that Amorim plays. Michael, Adoring will cost us too much in the release. Amorim will cost us, well, it will cost us about 13 mil without give or take. Daniela, I've heard that PSG are looking at Rashford. Could be a cheaper option. Jean-Claude, VAR is bent as well. We know it. Michelle, Sorry, Michael. Adoring style, not adoring predictive text. Charlie, have you seen? Apparently, sporting fans are annoyed and disappointed if Amorim goes to West Ham, as they see as a step down and an inferior club. They think he is moving for us for a better contract. King Roberts, Moyes doesn't understand that attacking is the best form of defence. And I've caught up, and I've done an hour 44. I can't believe it. Felt good to be back, and thank you all for getting me through it. So let me just recap on what I've discussed, so that for those of you who've joined late will know what I've banged on about. So I did a bit of a catch up. Cresswell offered a 1-year contract. He's turned it down. He's leaving. Johnson, can't get him to sign a new deal at the moment, so it looks like he's leaving. That's going to leave us with a problem with our homegrown talent, because we still don't know what's going to happen with Antonio and Danny Ings, etc. They're quite likely. It's possible they'll go, which means that we'll be quite short on homegrown talent. The only 3 homegrowns that are certain at this moment in time next season will be James Ward-Prowse, Joseph Anang, and Jared Bowen. So Tim Stein is going to have to pull his finger out and start looking for some homegrown talent. And one of those homegrowns, in my understanding, is we're still very interested in Conor Gallagher. I know he'll be worth about 50 mil, etc., etc. But Chelsea have got to sell to balance their books, and he's one of their current assets. So there's a possibility that he might go. Would he go to West Ham? I don't know, but we were interested before. There are also rumours that we want to get Ivan Toney to West Ham United. I talked about the bigger clubs quite possibly not being interested in Toney, 28 years of age. He seems to have a bit of a big mouth, and maybe he's put 1 or 2 clubs off, the likes of Arsenal, maybe Newcastle, maybe Man City. Would they want him? I'm not so sure. The next level down would be a team like West Ham United. It'd be a step up. No disrespect to Brentford, but it'll be a step up for him. He'll get bigger wages, etc. So my understanding is we are very interested in Ivan Toney, not only as a replacement striker, but also to balance our homegrown needs. Then I talked about the women's team. Rehan Skinner is lucky that Bristol City is so shit that we won't get relegated next season. Talked about the under-21s who've got a Premier League 2 battle with Tottenham Hotspur, 1 point behind, but Tottenham have got a game in hand. The under-18s were back to winning ways at the weekend with winning 3-0 away to Leicester, I think it was. Talked a bit about loan news. Mason Terry, supporter player of the year for the team that he plays for. Can't remember who it is. Gideon Codwell and Potts are in action for Wickham. They won at the weekend. I'm glad Codwell is getting more game time. I like him. He's a really decent player. Apaya Forsan got 3rd place in their supporter of the year for Dagenham and Redbridge. Well done to him as well. Ben Rama only lasted a half. Trot was defeated. Jared Bowen failed a late fitness test at the weekend against Palace, but we believe he'll be back for the game against Liverpool at the weekend. So should Areola. Areola was on the bench. I was surprised he didn't start against Crystal Palace, but I expect to see him in the team. And I did a match review, and then I asked about David Moyes, and then I asked about Amorim. Is he a realistic target? If you believe the news, apparently he's in London. I don't know. I couldn't get it corroborated earlier in the show before the show started. And of course, he went and bought Gyökeres. He's only managed to get 38 goals this season. How shit must he be? Right, that's it. I'm done. Thank you all for joining. As you know, I've been away for a while because yet again, things in life happen. And this show is dedicated to my dear mum, who died a month ago. So rest in peace, mother. And I will see you all very, very soon.